Alinea Restaurant, 31st floor. The wind whispered softly against the floor-to-ceiling glass panels. On the table, a glass of deep red Cabernet, a plate of scallops draped in brown butter sauce, my favorite dish. From the far corner, Claire de Lune drifted from a grand piano, mingling with the quiet clinks of silverware and crystal, forming a soundtrack that somehow felt mournful. I wore the black bateau neck dress Marcus gave me in our 3rd year of marriage. Back then, he said, "You wear this like a French film director, icy and irresistible." But tonight, he wasn't looking at me. He was studying the menu, eyes colder than stone. Lobster. Still not used to budgeting, are you, Camille? You do realize that inheritance isn't infinite. I smiled faintly, the corners of my lips rising like nothing was wrong. But inside, something was squeezing the breath out of my chest. I bent down to adjust my napkin, hiding eyes that were hot and glassy. My name is Camille Hart. I'm 35, an interior designer living in the suburbs of Chicago. My father, Leonard Hart, was a legend in Illinois real estate. When he passed away from a stroke, I inherited $2.3 million. I had once dreamed of using that money to open a showroom in New York, something I'd imagined since my days as an intern. But Marcus, my husband of 9 years, a successful financial advisor with an office in the Loop, saw that money differently. At first, there was tenderness in his gaze. Then, over time, it turned into something else, the way a man stares at land he's about to claim. I started noticing the shifts. He stayed out later, took phone calls at midnight on the balcony, voice hushed. One time, I saw him take his laptop into the bathroom, claiming he had to check emails from an Asian client. But Marcus never worked past 7 p.m., ever. Another morning, I logged in to check on some stocks. Marcus was behind me, one hand resting on my shoulder. His eyes never left the screen. Available balance $276,000 at day 2. No compliments, no questions. I shivered not because of the number, but because he looked at that money with more desire than he had ever looked at me. And then it happened. A Saturday morning, I was up early, making coffee while Marcus showered. His phone buzzed on the kitchen counter. The screen lit up with a name I didn't recognize, Sasha. My hands trembled as I picked it up. My heart pounded. Part of me already knew what I was about to see. The last message sat there, glowing. Thanks for the $75K. My spa's finally taking shape. Never thought I'd have a man who believed in all my dreams like you do. Friday, I'll wear the red lace. My body froze. Sasha wasn't just a mistress. She was an investment funded with my inheritance. I opened our shared laptop, logging in to the secondary account Marcus once forgot to lock. It only took 5 minutes and I found hell. A bank account in Florida under the name Sasha Weston. A newly registered LLC, Sasha Wellness Group. 5 transactions totaling $1.7 million. All transferred from our joint account over the last 3 months. She wasn't a massage girl, she was a predator. And Marcus, he was either her accomplice or her willing prey. I didn't cry. I sat on the living room floor, the morning sun slicing through the blinds, my back against the couch, holding the phone. I read the message over and over like some addict chasing pain. I remembered the day he proposed to me by Lake Michigan, said he'd never leave even if your career never takes off. I'm not going anywhere. And now, that same man was pumping millions into a pole dancer's dream of luxury spa domination. That night, Marcus came home late. I'd already cleaned up all the paperwork, changed the main account's password, and moved every last estate document out of our shared safe. I'm no finance expert, but my father taught me how to protect wealth. Lessons I once thought I'd never use had become weapons. Marcus walked in, kicked off his shoes like everything was normal. I smiled and poured him a glass of wine, the kind he loved to sip after a successful investment deal. I didn't confront him, didn't ask, because I knew the hunt only begins when the prey thinks it's safe. I didn't leave, didn't cry, didn't walk out of the house where every wall bore my designs. I stayed, not out of love, but because I wanted him to dig his own grave, and when the time came, I'd be standing at the edge, shovel in hand. From that night on, I was no longer the old Camille Hart. I started waking up before Marcus. I cooked him full breakfasts, as if I still loved him pancakes, bacon, soft-boiled eggs exactly the way he liked. I smiled when he walked into the kitchen, kissed me on the forehead, completely unaware that I had read every chapter of the double life he was living with Sasha. I played the role of the perfect doting wife, and he never suspected a thing. But in my mind, every detail, every piece of evidence was being gathered and threaded together. I needed more time. He hadn't drained everything yet, and I wasn't entirely sure how I wanted to destroy them, just that I would. I didn't tell my friends, but I started watching Sasha. She had just moved into a sleek condo in Brickell, Miami's glitzy haven. Her spa was under construction. I hired a private investigator, someone my father once used, to vet business rivals, and within 3 weeks, I had it all: photos, transactions, travel logs, even hidden camera footage of Marcus leaving her apartment around midnight. I wasn't shocked. I was entertained. The way he slinked out with his head down, like a teenager sneaking out of detention. And Sasha, draped in a nightgown thinner than air, saw him off with a smile and a kiss on the cheek. She wasn't naive. She wasn't some helpless woman Marcus seduced. She was a partner, maybe even the architect of the whole thing. I compiled everything into a leather-bound dossier, backed up the files to an encrypted cloud folder, stored a USB copy in a second safe one only I had the key to. Then one afternoon, I passed by Marcus's home office and heard him on the phone. Yeah, she doesn't suspect a thing. Trust me, she still thinks I'm investing in ETFs. It won't be long before you have full ownership of Sasha Wellness Group. And after that, his voice dropped. I kept walking quietly, but inside something turned to ice. I met with my personal attorney, Ava Chen, the woman who handled my father's estate, Chinese-American, razor-sharp, and utterly discreet. I told her everything. She said, "Camille, if you want a divorce, we can freeze the assets immediately. But if you want to play the long game, you'll need to prepare emotionally, financially, and strategically." I didn't answer right away. I turned toward the window, where the Chicago skyline burned orange in the sunset, skyscrapers slicing the light like blades. I suddenly remembered how long had it been since Marcus last held my hand in public. I turned back to Ava and said, "I don't want a divorce. I want every cent back, and I want him humiliated in the most public way possible." A week later, I overheard Sasha on a call. I was in my car, parked just 3 lots from Marcus's office. I hit record. Her voice came through the speakerphone, sharp and impatient. "If you don't transfer that $250K this week, the contractors walk. I've already given interviews. Marcus." The man behind my success. "What? You want me to lose that media momentum? You promised me Forbes." I almost laughed. She wasn't just his mistress. She was using Marcus the same way he had used me, and he was so drunk on her praise. He didn't even see he was being hollowed out. That night, I set the house like a scene from a romance wine. Candles, soft music. I wanted to watch him squirm. He walked in, tension in every muscle. I asked gently. "Rough day at work," he muttered. "Just some tax issues. You know how the IRS is lately." That's when I knew he was using my name. Using Camille Hart in documents to legitimize transfers to Sasha. Using an old LLC I once invested in to funnel money and dodge tax scrutiny. I acted clueless, but in my mind, I was already crafting a financial explosion so elegant. It would detonate exactly when I pulled the pin. A few days later, I started moving the remaining personal funds into a new account at Wells Fargo. Account holder Camille Weston, my mother's maiden name, never used until now. I quietly formed a new LLC under a shell name to house the future of what I called my resurrection plan. That night, I dreamt of Marcus in an all-white interrogation room, wrists cuffed, screaming in panic. Sasha stood beside him, grinning like a cat with a fresh kill. She turned to me, only her eyes weren't hers. They were mine. I woke at 3 a.m., picked up my phone, and texted Ava, "I'm ready. Let's begin phase 2, in the dark of a house that used to be a home." I opened my laptop and pulled up the architectural plans for Sasha's luxury spa. Beautiful but sloppy, and ripe with investment holes. I would turn her dream into a nightmare. As for Marcus, he wouldn't see it coming, not until he lost everything: the reputation, the money, and the one thing he cherished most: control. I began rebuilding a new version of myself, a different Camille. Colder than steel, soft as velvet when necessary. No one saw me break. No one knew about the nights I sat in the dark, counting every transaction Marcus made under my name. Each dollar he wired to Sasha felt like a new stab, but I didn't pull the knife out. I let it sink deeper. Let the pain feed the revenge I was building. A month later, Marcus officially asked me to sign off on a new joint investment. He pitched it like he was doing me a favor. "Camille, I think we should put the remaining funds into real estate. I've got some partners in Florida beachfront resort development. It's an insider deal, really strong return projections." He laid out a pristine contract. All the partner signatures were already in place, just missing mine. But I had come prepared. I leaned back, tilted my head, looked at him softly. "Marcus, you once promised never to make an investment without asking me. I'd like some time to read it." I took the contract, walked out of the room, and immediately scanned and emailed a copy to Ava. There was no resort. The partners were shell LLCs, fronts tied directly to Sasha's bank accounts. Marcus wasn't just lying to me. He was laundering money using my name. But one thing made me stop cold. A misdirected bank statement arrived at our house. It showed a $100,000 transfer from Sasha Wellness Group to a name I didn't recognize, JW Consulting. I had the investigator dig into it. Turns out JW stood for Jonas White, a former attorney, disbarred for manipulating investment contracts. He'd been a shadow advisor for Marcus during his time at Strive Capital, the firm that fired him 3 years ago for insider trading. I never knew. Marcus never told me. He hadn't just lied about the present, he'd rewritten his past. Sasha wasn't naive either. She had her own agenda. I followed her Instagram. Every post was meticulously curated photos with Marcus at Nobu, Miami. Close-ups of her natural face with captions like "authentic as intellect," Hashtags galore, your boss babe, your self-made queen, luxury wellness. But one post caught my eye, a story slide featuring the financial blueprint for a spa chain called the Weston Method, with a trademark logo and handwritten note IPO in 5 years. She didn't just want money, she wanted fame. To become the queen of luxury wellness in America. Marcus. Just a stepping stone. One day, I visited Angela, an old friend of my father's, and a top-tier real estate appraiser in Manhattan. Years ago, I'd designed interiors for 3 of her high-profile properties, and she'd once promised, if you ever need an in, I'll open the door. I told her everything, held nothing back. Angela sat in silence for a long moment, then finally said, "You won't beat them with emotion. But if you want to burn that spa empire to the ground, I have an idea." Together, we built a plan. Create a fake luxury investment project just big enough, just tempting enough, and just real enough to convince Marcus it was his golden ticket to recover from all his other failed ventures. At the same time, I began working behind the scenes with the IRS. Ava arranged a confidential meeting with a financial crimes inspector, the same man who once investigated Strive Capital. I handed over the full dossier, wire transfers, invoices, the tangled money flow between Marcus, Sasha, and JW Consulting. My condition: my name dragged through the mud in fake documents had to be publicly cleared. I didn't want quiet vindication. I wanted Marcus exposed, and if possible, arrested in front of Sasha. The deeper I dug, the filthier it got. Marcus hadn't just betrayed me. He had a trail of lawsuits, 2 former clients. One settled privately after he mishandled a widow's life savings under a guaranteed investment plan. He wasn't a man who lost his way. He was a predator, a professional parasite. And I, his wife of nearly a decade, was just a sweet, compliant funding source. I remembered a night 3 years ago. I'd fallen asleep on the couch after a long work trip. Marcus covered me with a blanket, kissed my forehead, and whispered, "I don't care about money. I just want you healthy and happy." Now, that sentence felt like a knife across my brain. But I didn't cry. Not anymore. Instead, I sat in the living room, laptop open. On the screen, blueprints for Aria Haven, the fake resort in the Hamptons I would use as bait. I stared at the 3D rendering, then whispered to myself, "You love luxury. Then I'll gift you the most beautiful, gold-plated pit you've ever fallen into." Aria Haven. A name that sounded like a symphony for the rich was born in a cramped attic office in Angela's Manhattan suite. We picked Sag Harbor, that symbolic gem of the Hamptons, where the ultra-wealthy say they're taking a break, when in reality, they're just moving 7-figure deals, around with a glass of white wine in hand. I hired a faux design team, real professionals, just using fake names who rendered every villa, infinity pool, and Brazilian rosewood yoga room down to the perfect shadow. Within 10 days, we launched a stunning website, complete with an Instagram account, buzzing with fake engagement palm-lined terraces, moody dusk lighting, women in silk robes holding matcha beside fireplaces with Italian stone mantels. Every detail was engineered to spark greed, especially in a man desperate after watching his mistress bleed him of every last dime and ounce of pride. Marcus, just 3 weeks later, he received an internal leak from a supposedly elite investment account. Aria Haven is nearing capacity for internal investors. We're seeking 1-2 strategic partners with a background in luxury real estate. Estimated ROI 220% within 24 months. Marcus didn't hesitate, didn't question it, didn't ask anyone. That night, he called me, putting on the act of a humbled husband, as if this was a turning point for us. "Camille, I know I've messed up, but this is my chance to make it right, for both of us." I looked at him with dewy eyes, like I was touched, but in my head, all I could hear was one delicious sentence playing over and over. Imagine his face when he finds out I wrote that email. 1 week later, Marcus arranged a meeting with Aria Haven's investment liaison me, in disguise. Catherine Lowell, European financial advisor. Icy blonde, glasses, never smiled. I hired a makeup artist, trained myself to speak with a soft Parisian lilt, and perfected the detached, slow blink of someone used to flying private. Marcus didn't recognize me. He just saw hope in the form of a fabricated luxury deal. I handed him a non-binding commitment form, $600,000 to hold a spot. "No legal obligation," I said, cool and crisp. "But if you withdraw post-commitment, you'll be permanently blacklisted from all future high-tier opportunities." He bit, signed instantly. 3 days later, Sasha called him mid-workday. I had the recording thanks to a mic planted by my investigator, Marcus. "Are you insane, $600K? That's the entire therapy suite budget." "You said this spa was my future?" Marcus roared. "I'm going to make it back with Aria Haven. Just trust me one last time," and that was when I cracked the gates of hell open. I arranged a private investor reception at a boutique luxury hotel in Soho. Marcus and Sasha showed up dressed like two faded stars, still pretending the spotlight loved them. As Catherine, I greeted them with chilled Bollinger and foie gras. I stood face to face with two people who had once held my heart, trampled it, and laughed as they did it. Now they were mine. Sasha glanced at my diamond black ring purely for intimidation, then quipped, "You don't seem American." I smiled, said nothing, but in my mind I whispered, "Oh, darling, you'll remember me very well when I burn down everything you built with my money." 3 days after the meeting, Marcus transferred the remaining $400,000 to secure his priority investor status. That moment, I hit send, delivering every piece of transactional evidence to the IRS. From Ava's law office, we filed supplemental documents showing Marcus had forged my name, used my old LLCs, and falsified signatures in a multi-channel money laundering scheme spanning over 14 months. The case was upgraded to extended preliminary investigation. A week later, I met with Angela again, armed with Marcus's latest bank statements and the final blueprints for Aria Haven. Angela looked at me and said, slowly, "You've lured him right to the edge, but to make him fall, you need to give one hard kick." I had the plan. We'd throw a lavish launch event for Aria Haven, invite every luxury real estate reporter, a handful of fake investors I'd hired through a broker, and crown Marcus as the founding investor. I had invitations printed on gold-flecked cardstock, sent via FedEx, embossed with the words, "Your legacy begins here." Sasha, of course, wouldn't miss it. She posted a story days before the event, posing in front of a mirror. "Headed to the Aria Haven launch with Marcus. Let's build an empire, babe." I saved the story, partly for the record, mostly to play it back to Osaka on the day that empire collapsed, and deep down, I knew Marcus believed he was finally saving his career. But what he didn't know was this: I am the ashes he stepped on 3 years ago. And now, those ashes are on fire. The launch day for Aria Haven arrived under a thick, theatrical sky. A blanket of clouds hung low over Manhattan, as if the universe itself had a score to settle. I had rented the entire main floor of the Whitmore Hotel for the event. styling it in Scandinavian minimalism, clean lines, pale woods, artful shadows, quiet wealth, the kind Marcus couldn't resist. I stood backstage in a white silk jumpsuit, hair pinned in a sleek knot, face carved with sharp contour and sharper resolve. There was no trace of the old Camille the gentle wife, the overlooked partner. Tonight, I was Catherine Lowell, the Parisian investment executive behind a luxury fund that didn't exist, but was staffed by a very real team. Marcus entered the lobby in a charcoal suit, his Rolex Datejust glinting under the soft uplights. I had given him that watch for his 38th birthday. He didn't carry his usual smugness, just a desperate kind of ambition, clinging to what he thought would save him. Sasha walked in beside him, draped in a silver Versace dress that clung to her like a warning label. Her chest threatened to escape the neckline, and her heels clacked across the marble as if announcing her arrival to a red carpet. She moved like this was a documentary premiere about her life. The event began with a short promo video I'd commissioned from a studio in LA, narrated by a British female voice that oozed quiet seduction, a vision of luxury, crafted for the soul, owned by the few. Marcus nodded, eyes glassy with pride. Sasha leaned into him, beaming. Neither had the faintest clue that the video was an illusion, a projection made from their own delusions of wealth and glory. I stepped onto the stage as the spotlight hit, music fading into silence. My voice rang out cool, deliberate. Ladies and gentlemen, today is not merely the unveiling of a real estate development. It is an invitation for those bold enough to dream and clear-eyed enough to see the truth. The room fell quiet. I clicked the remote. A slide appeared on the massive screen behind me, an organizational map showing the legal structure of Aria Haven's investment units. But instead of random LLCs and shell names, the diagram lit up with something else entirely. Sasha Wellness Group, JW Consulting, Marcus H. Anderson Camille Hart, forged documents. Marcus shot up from his seat. What the hell is this? I pulled off the glasses, let down my hair, and just like that, the silence in the room deepened into something deadly. Hello, Marcus, I said, voice steady. You recognize me now, don't you? Sasha whispered. Camille. A wave of murmurs rolled through the crowd. The livestream cameras swiveled. A reporter from New York Real Estate Daily lifted her camera. Click. I advanced to the next slide, financial records with red arrows tracing wire transfers from our joint account directly into Sasha's business. You used my name to launder $1.7 million into a company owned by your mistress. Remember that Marcus barked? This is a setup. She's faking all of this. Oh, really? I tilted my head, smirked. Then why is the IRS sitting right there? The back doors opened. 2 IRS agents in dark suits walked in. One of them stepped forward, holding a summons in his hand. Not handcuffed, not arrested, but humiliated, in front of everyone. Marcus collapsed into a chair, head bowed. Sasha looked around in panic, hands trembling. Marcus, you said this was clean. You said this would go IPO. You said. I leaned toward her, just close enough for the mic to catch it. An IPO, honey. Maybe try your OnlyFans account first. That's easier to fund. The entire room erupted. Laughter, flashbulbs, whispers. Sasha stood frozen. Marcus unraveled. I turned to the audience. Aria Haven was never real. But the truth you saw tonight is, I am Camille Hart. I was betrayed, robbed, erased. I don't need your sympathy. I came for justice. The livestream went viral within hours. Ariacon, Migraspascam, Aurikoi, Camille Hart. I didn't intend to start a media wildfire, but I knew I'd struck the match. News outlets called me the financially savage wife. 3 days later, Sasha vanished from social media. Her spa shut down, website locked in under investigation mode. Marcus was terminated from his latest firm, his accounts frozen, and me, I wasn't finished. I appeared on Women Who Rebuilt the Nation's biggest financial empowerment podcast for women. I didn't cry. I didn't play the victim. I said this: no one can take everything from you unless you hand them the keys. And when they think you've lost it all, let them forget the one thing that matters most. You're the only one who knows where the detonator is. That night, I stood alone on the balcony of my new Upper East Side penthouse, a glass of champagne in hand. Below, the lights of New York sparkled like the pulse of an empire. Marcus was gone. Sasha, probably hiding somewhere, her reputation in ashes, and me, I was still standing. Not just surviving, but reigning. And the best part, I didn't need forgiveness. I just needed them to never forget who I am. 3 weeks after that magnificent night, I was still getting hundreds of emails from women all over the country. Women who'd been betrayed, belittled, stabbed in the back by the person who once swore they were doing it for your own good. They called me an icon, but I knew better. I was just someone who'd hit rock bottom and used the broken pieces to build a damn staircase. I thought I was done, but life never lets you leave clean. Angela called me on a gray Monday morning. "Camille, you should come in. There's something I think you need to see." I slid into the familiar leather chair in her office. On the table was a thick folder: contracts, bank transfers, and one particular power of attorney document signed in March, 3 months before I exposed Marcus. The signer, Sasha Weston. The beneficiary, Jonas White. My jaw tightened. Jonas. The dirty lawyer who used to launder money with Marcus. Angela nodded. She transferred all her shares, her investment assets, even the rights to the Weston Method brand, to him. Emergency authorization, in case of legal exposure. I leaned back, my entire body suddenly cold, and I understood. Sasha had anticipated the fallout. In a high-rise apartment in Texas, Jonas White, the pawn I thought I'd already neutralized, was now hosting quiet meetings with a fresh crop of investors. The new project, Vita Sanctuary, different name. But the images, the mission, the color palettes were identical to Weston Method. Sasha hadn't vanished. She had evolved, passing the spotlight to Jonas, a face untouched by scandal, to front a product she still controlled from the shadows. Angela gripped my hand. "You won a big battle, but Sasha, she doesn't live for money. She lives for influence." For the first time in months, something crawled cold down the back of my neck. I had taken Marcus down through greed, but Sasha, she played with ambition and intellect. If I stopped now, everything would have just been a performance. I couldn't let a snake simply shed her skin and keep slithering away. I gathered Ava and our legal team. The next 3 weeks, we launched an entirely new investigation, not into Marcus, but Jonas, and every single strand that led back to the Weston brand. Turns out, Sasha had quietly built a web of shell companies in Nevada, where shareholder transparency laws are laughably weak. Through them, she funneled money, intellectual property, and brand licenses into offshore accounts. She used fake identities, paid proxies to sign documents, and even registered a reputation management firm in Europe to handle Jonas's PR. It was dizzying, but deep down I smiled. It's rare to meet a rival that actually deserves your energy. I decided not to fight Sasha the old way. She was fluent in media manipulation, in glamorized narratives. What she didn't expect was for a name she thought she buried to come roaring back brighter, bigger, and untouchable. I returned not as Camille Hart, the betrayed wife, but as the founder and CEO of Hart Collective, a luxury interior design firm now partnered with 2 major Manhattan real estate developers. We launched a new campaign, Design Beyond Healing, a series of high-end therapeutic spas in major Utah cities, each personalized to customer experience. But with one twist, every spa was a work of emotional art, inspired by real stories of women who had been deceived and rebuilt. The campaign exploded, featured in Vogue, Architectural Digest, The Cut, Harper's Bazaar called me a space stylist storyteller, transforming scars into sculpture. And Sasha, she could only watch me on TV. In October, I hosted a charity auction at the New York Public Library. I invited the biggest names in investment, design, and media. And I sent one special invitation to Jonas White, not as Camille, but as Catherine Lowell. He came, swaggering in like a man who thought he'd reclaimed the throne. But the moment he stepped into that historic hall, I was already on stage microphone, in hand backlit by a massive screen showing the structure of shell companies in Nevada, with money traced back to one account in Zurich under the name Sasha Weston. "Welcome to the trust auction," I began, locking eyes with him. "We will begin with truth and end with justice." Jonas froze. The room held its breath. I clicked again. The next slide read, "Initiating legal campaign under the Investment Fraud Prevention Act." The twist wasn't that I had returned. It was this: I wasn't avenging myself anymore. I was here to stop the next generation of Sashas. As Jonas was escorted out under a barrage of flashing cameras, I didn't feel victorious. I felt clean. No debts left with myself, no anchors in the past. Just one thing left in front of me: the final chapter. 6 months after Jonas was escorted out of the auction under the blaze of camera flashes, I stood alone inside the pristine white space of the Hart Collective flagship spa, our first location on New York's Upper West Side. On the wall behind the reception desk, engraved in gold, was the only quote I allowed to represent the brand. "No pain is meaningless if you learn to turn it into power." Beneath that line hung a light sculpture made from thousands of angled mirrors, reflecting one another until they formed the silhouette of a woman engulfed in flames, yet her eyes were calm, as if she knew the fire wasn't destruction, it was transformation. The press called me the new icon of the elegant revenge era, elegance with vengeance. I didn't deny it, but I didn't embrace it either, because now I wasn't living to prove anything. I was living to control the narrative. Marcus had been charged with financial fraud and money laundering. After nearly 8 months of litigation and backdoor negotiations, he received a suspended sentence and a $2.4 million fine, most of which went into my restitution account. He lived in a rented 1-bedroom apartment in Chicago, doing part-time bookkeeping for a nameless startup. Recently, he sent me an email, just one line: "I was wrong, but I still remember your perfume." I never replied, but I didn't delete it either. Not because I still felt something, but because it reminded me how far I'd come from the girl who once believed that man was her future. And Sasha. She never went to prison. Nevada's loophole-ridden corporate laws made her transfers technically legal, but she'd been locked out of every legitimate path forward. No spa would touch the Weston brand. No investor would touch her. One of her former assistants, now working for me, told me she's in a rented condo in Austin, chopped her hair, filling out online applications to be a wellness consultant for some D-list loungewear brand. I wasn't thrilled, but I felt justice. She used to build the board. Now she was just a pawn, fumbling her next doomed move. In November, I hosted a private roundtable financial rebirth for women. Beside me sat 3 women I deeply respected, a former bank executive fired for exposing internal fraud, a single mom who went bankrupt after her ex-husband vanished, and a social activist who had once been a domestic violence survivor. When the host asked Camille, "What do you believe is the true sign a woman has won?" I looked straight into the camera and smiled. It's not when she gets rich. It's not even when she gets revenge. It's when she has the choice to stay silent or speak, and either way, the world listens. I left the studio close to midnight. New York had turned cold. A man in a gray suit approached me. His name was Ethan, an early investor in Heart Collective. Quiet, understated, and most importantly, he never asked about my past. "Got time for a drink?" He asked. I looked into his eyes. For the first time in years, I didn't think about Marcus or Sasha or even myself as a project to be rebuilt. I just nodded. Only if the place makes a proper Negroni. That night, we sat at a rooftop bar overlooking Central Park. Ethan asked me, "Do you believe in forgiveness?" I was quiet for a while. "No," I said, "I don't forgive. I just move forward without letting the weight of hate slow me down." A year later, I stood on stage at the Women in Business Legacy Edition Awards. They called my name for a title I never sought, but earned the woman who rebuilt an empire from rubble and lit the path for millions. I didn't cry. But as I stepped off the stage, I saw Ava, Angela, and a dozen women from the New Frame Scholarship program I'd founded. In their eyes, I saw the Camille I used to be, heart cracked open, but gaze still bold enough to stare darkness down. On the latest spa design for Heart Collective, our first in Venice, Italy, I added a small Latin inscription beneath the logo Quadrade, non perit. What burns is not lost. I am Camille Hart. I once lost everything, but I never lost myself. And if you ask me whether I forgive, I'll smile and say, I don't need to forgive because I won.